The conference room is already quiet when the door closes. Los Angeles, 1943, late afternoon light presses through the narrow blinds, cutting the room into stripes of gold and shadow. Dust floats in the air, unmoving. No one reaches for it. No one clears their throat. At the center of the table, a thin man in a dark government suit finishes placing a folder down. He does not slide it. He sets it flat, square, deliberate. Jack Warner watches the folder land. He smirks. It's small, almost polite. The kind of expression he's worn 1,000 times before when a censor overreaches, when a politician postures, when a visitor mistakes proximity to power for ownership of it. Across from him, the FBI man does not react. He doesn't smile back. He doesn't explain. He doesn't speak. The silence stretches just long enough to become uncomfortable. Jack Warner leans back in his chair, one hand resting casually on the table edge. His suit is impeccable, studio-tailored, wartime patriotic pin on the lapel. He's in his own house on his own lot, surrounded by his own people. This is supposed to be a courtesy meeting. That's how it was framed. A routine visit, patriotic cooperation. Washington and Hollywood aligned for the war effort, scripts reviewed, names shared, mutual benefit. That's what Warner expected. The producer, seated to his right, glances at the folder, then at Warner, waiting for him to open it. The publicist at the far end of the table sits unnaturally still, hands folded too tightly, eyes fixed on the FBI man's face. The FBI man finally speaks. Not loudly. Not forcefully. Just enough. We've made a few notes. That's it. No threat. No demand. No raised voice. Jack Warner lets out a soft breath through his nose, a half chuckle, not disrespectful, just confident. Notes, he repeats, tasting the word. He reaches forward and opens the folder. Inside is the script. Their script. Marked up. Not in red pencil. Not with angry slashes. Clean, precise, almost gentle. Certain lines are underlined. A character's motivation circled. A margin note next to a speech about federal authority. The room seems to tighten. Jack Warner flips a page, then another. His expression doesn't change, but his fingers slow. The confidence in the movement drains away, replaced by calculation. The FBI man watches him carefully now. This isn't censorship, not formally. There's no production code seal involved here, no Breen office letterhead, no list of moral violations. This is something else. Warner looks up. So, he says casual again, you've got thoughts. The FBI man nods once. Yes. Another pause. Jack Warner waits for more. It doesn't come. The silence settles differently this time, heavier, purposeful. The producer clears his throat, then stops himself halfway through the sound, as if realizing he shouldn't have made any noise at all. Jack Warner closes the folder slowly. What happens if we disagree, he asks. It's a reasonable question, even a polite one. In another context, it might have sounded harmless. The FBI man doesn't answer immediately. He glances down, not at the folder but at the table itself, the polished wood, the reflections of faces caught in it, then he looks back up. There wouldn't be anything to disagree about, he says. Jack Warner's smirk fades. Not completely, just enough. The FBI man continues, still calm. Without approval, there's no cooperation. Without cooperation, there's no access. And without access, he lets the sentence end on its own. No one asks him to finish it. Because everyone in that room already understands what access means in 1943. It means military equipment. It means locations. It means credibility. It means being seen as supportive or not. Jack Warner has spent his career controlling narratives. He understands leverage when he sees it. He taps the folder once with his finger. You're saying this picture doesn't move forward. The FBI man shakes his head gently. I'm saying it moves forward without us. The difference is surgical. Without us means no endorsements, no background support, no quiet assurances to Washington that Warner Bros. Is playing its part. And worse, no protection. Because in 1943, the FBI doesn't just observe Hollywood. It remembers. The room feels smaller now. Jack Warner glances to his producer, then back to the FBI man. And if we make the changes? The FBI man nods again. Then everything continues as it has. Another pause. Warner studies him, really studies him this time, not as a visitor, not as a bureaucrat. As a gatekeeper. The power in the room has shifted and everyone knows it, but no one acknowledges it out loud. Jack Warner finally smiles again. But it's different now. Tighter. Measured. Well, he says, closing the folder completely, I suppose that depends on which notes we're talking about. The FBI man doesn't return the smile. He reaches forward and taps one specific page through the folder. Just once. That page. Nothing else. Jack Warner doesn't open it again. He doesn't need to. Because he already knows what's written there. And for the first time since the meeting began, no one in the room is sure who actually owns the script anymore. No one reaches for the folder. Not Jack Warner. Not the producer. Not the publicist. The FBI man keeps his finger resting on the table where the page sits beneath the cardboard cover, as if touching it again would be unnecessary. The message has already landed. Jack Warner shifts in his chair, just slightly, enough to signal he's recalibrating. You'll understand, Warner says carefully, we've been making pictures about institutions for a long time. Strong institutions, trusted institutions. He pauses. Audiences respond to that. The FBI man listens without nodding. Warner continues, but drama requires tension, conflict. If everyone's perfect, there's no story. The FBI man finally withdraws his hand from the folder. He folds both hands together in front of him. The movement is precise, practiced. There's tension, he says, just not where you've placed it. The producer's eyes flick to Warner again. This is not how these meetings usually go. There's normally a back and forth, a negotiation, some visible line where compromise is being discussed. This feels different. Jack Warner leans forward now. His elbows touch the table, his voice lowers. You're asking us to change a character. Yes. You're asking us to soften an outcome. Yes. And you're asking us to remove a line that isn't inaccurate. The FBI man doesn't answer immediately. Instead, he looks around the room. Not at the faces. At the walls. The framed posters, the awards, the visible proof of influence, of reach, of audience trust. Then he looks back at Warner. Inaccuracy isn't the issue, he says, emphasis is. The word hangs in the air. Emphasis. It's a subtle shift, not a denial. Not a contradiction, a reframing. Jack Warner nods slowly as if considering the point, but his mind is already racing ahead. He knows what this really is. Not censorship. Not oversight. Alignment. And alignment during wartime is not optional. Warner opens the folder again. This time he turns directly to the page the FBI man tapped earlier. The room seems to lean toward him. The note in the margin is short. 3 words. Reconsider portrayal. No explanation, no suggestion, no alternative offered. Just reconsider. Jack Warner exhales. That's vague, he says. The FBI man shrugs slightly, the first hint of casualness he's shown all afternoon. It's meant to be flexible. The publicist finally speaks, her voice tight. Flexible for whom? The FBI man looks at her, really looks at her, not unkindly, but with enough focus to remind her she's been noticed. For you, he says, and for us. Silence again. Jack Warner closes the folder once more, slower this time. He places his palm flat on top of it as if grounding himself. And if we decide the portrayal stands, he asks. The FBI man doesn't hesitate now. Then there's no reason for continued coordination. Jack Warner raises an eyebrow. Coordination, he repeats. Yes. And what does that look like exactly when it stops? The FBI man leans back slightly in his chair. It looks like unanswered calls, he says, delayed permissions, a sudden lack of availability when your researchers ask for confirmation. He pauses. It looks like questions. The word lands hard. Questions. In 1943, questions don't come from just anywhere, They come from committees, from agencies, from people who don't need warrants to cause trouble. Jack Warner understands reputational risk better than anyone in Hollywood. Studios don't collapse from scandal alone, they collapse from scrutiny. He nods slowly. Questions are part of democracy, he says. The FBI man smiles faintly. So is cooperation. The producer shifts in his seat, the publicist swallows. Jack Warner stares at the closed folder. For a moment it looks like he might push back, like he might challenge the premise. He's done it before with censors, with politicians, with rival studios. But this is different. This isn't a fight he can win publicly. There's no press release that says Warner Bros. Defied the FBI and lived happily ever after. There's only what happens quietly afterward. Warner lifts his hand from the folder. We'll review the notes, he says. The FBI man nods once, satisfied. I'll expect a revised draft, he says, standing now, soon. Jack Warner stands as well. The producer and publicist follow suit, chairs scraping softly against the floor. The FBI man collects nothing, he leaves the folder behind. A deliberate choice. At the door he turns back. One more thing, he says. Jack Warner looks at him. This conversation, the FBI man continues, never happened. Warner doesn't smile this time. Of course not. The door closes. The sound echoes longer than it should. No one speaks for several seconds. Finally, the producer exhales sharply. What just happened? Jack Warner walks back to the table, he sits, he opens the folder again. What's inside hasn't changed. But everything about it has. They didn't threaten us, the publicist says quietly, did they? Jack Warner shakes his head. No, he says, they didn't have to. He flips through the pages one by one, each mark now feels heavier, more deliberate. This isn't about one film anymore. It's about precedent. If Warner Bros. Complies quietly, the door stays open. If they resist, even politely, that door doesn't slam. It simply stops opening. Jack Warner closes the folder for the final time. We'll make the changes, he says. The producer looks relieved, the publicist looks uneasy. And if this keeps happening, she asks. Warner stands. Then we'll learn to write differently. He leaves the room without another word. The folder stays on the table. Waiting. The revised script is delivered without ceremony. No cover letter. No explanation. No argument attached. Just a clean draft, carefully adjusted, slid quietly back through the same invisible channel it came from. No one at the studio announces the changes. There's no meeting to debate them, no memo circulated to staff. The edits simply exist now as if they were always meant to. The sharp edge is gone. The line that implied doubt has been softened. The authority figure no longer hesitates. The moment of moral ambiguity has been reassigned to someone else. On screen it barely registers. But behind the screen everyone knows. The FBI responds exactly as promised. Access resumes. Phones are answered. Doors open again. The cooperation is seamless enough that, to the outside world, nothing ever appears to have been interrupted. That's the point. Jack Warner doesn't talk about the meeting afterward, not with his brothers, not with his producers, not even in private. But his behavior changes. Subtly. Scripts involving federal agencies begin to arrive already precautioned. Writers learn, without being told directly, which angles slow projects down and which ones glide through effortlessly. No one says the FBI won't like this. They say things like, maybe we don't need that scene. Let's shift the focus earlier. Do we really need that line? It becomes instinct. A form of self-editing that doesn't feel like fear at first, just efficiency. Months pass. Then years. The war ends, but the relationships don't. Hollywood grows more careful, not less. The studios learn that power doesn't always arrive with paperwork or threats. Sometimes it arrives in the form of a man who takes notes and doesn't explain them. Jack Warner continues to produce hits. His reputation remains intact. Publicly, nothing about that afternoon in 1943 ever matters. But privately, he understands something he didn't before. Ownership is conditional. Studios own the cameras, the sets, the contracts. But legitimacy, national legitimacy, belongs to someone else. And it can be withdrawn quietly. Long after the film is released, long after the audience forgets the details, the lesson lingers inside the studio system. That certain institutions are not to be dramatized freely. That certain portrayals invite friction. That silence can be a policy tool. Years later, when other studios face congressional scrutiny, when committees form and names are called, Warner Bros. Navigates the terrain with practiced caution. They've been here before. Not on record, but in memory. Jack Warner never publicly admits the shift. He doesn't need to. His actions speak instead in the scripts that never get written, the conflicts that dissolve before they reach a page. The most effective pressure he ever faced didn't raise its voice. It didn't make a demand. It simply stopped talking. And in that quiet, Jack Warner realized something that never appeared in the trades, never made a headline, and never left a paper trail. In Hollywood, the most dangerous edits are the ones you agree to make yourself. Because once you do, no one has to ask again. The room goes silent. And it stays that way.